After days of waiting, the much-anticipated call between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin has finally taken place. A lot was expected of this meeting as the world was carefully watching where today's events would lead and how much closer they would bring Ukraine and Russia to an actual tangible ceasefire. Joining me now to dissect what we know about the call and its consequences so far is Iuliia Osmolovska, head of Globsec Kyiv and an expert with 15 years of diplomatic service at the Ukrainian Foreign Ministry. Good evening, and thank you for joining me on the program.
Good evening, ma'am.
Let's take a look what's been happening. President Vladimir Putin committed in a phone call with Donald Trump to limit Russian attacks on Ukrainian energy infrastructure, but declined to agree to a broader 30-day ceasefire, the one that U.S. in fact sought. What do you think does this signal, and does Russia actually want to reach that ceasefire?
I think that right now we're having strong evidence of completely the opposite, because the Russian statement says that Putin has immediately ordered to suspend all attacks on Ukraine and critical infrastructure. And right now we're being heavily covered by the drone attacks in Kyiv, and you can even hear this, probably some explosions or some sounds on the background right now. So this is the clear evidence how Putin is actually determined to act in good faith, how he claims, and to actually achieve this ceasefire.
Do you think that Putin, in this situation with the drone attack that you just mentioned, is he playing for time? What's the next step?
I don't know what's his logic or his explanation of this might be, because it's already happened after the call, after the both sides issued these statements, and Donald Trump saying that he received this confidence of Russia willing to act in goodwill. So I don't know. We just need to wait and see. So basically, they might explain that it was about no attacks on critical infrastructure and energy, but not on civilians. So this is how they might explain this. But actually, we just got the report that half of one of the small towns had been just cut off because of the drone attacks of electricity. So.
There's been pieces of information floating from the Kremlin. We also heard from Kirill Dmitriev, Putin's business envoy, and he said, I quote, "Under the leadership of President Putin and President Trump, the world has become a much safer place today." Your commentary to this statement?
Yeah, you definitely need to read both readouts of White House and of Kremlin and to compare them, because the White House one, it's more or less balanced objectively, and it actually states about the stages, how they would like to go ahead, like having this confidence building measures of ceasefire on attacks on critical infrastructure, then technical negotiations on security in Black Sea region, leading to basically the full ceasefire and eventual lasting peace, whereas the Kremlin side pretends to show that it's up to two leaders to decide on and around Ukrainian crisis, and always been stressing this kind of like the two of them, like US and Russia, working on this crisis, leaving the Ukrainian aside. So this is very interesting reading, and Russians obviously trying to present with this the similarity and commonality with the American side, that they sharing the common views on the conflict. For instance, Russian statement also mentions the similar voting that they had recently in the United Nations on the crisis in Ukraine, like Russians mentioned. So it's definitely clear big difference on how these talks are presented by Russian side and by the American side. And basically, which is also very interesting, the recent statement of Donald Trump on what's going on in these talks. He says that this horrible war between Russia and Ukraine has to be brought to the end, whereas Russians deliberately trying to present this as the internal crisis in Ukraine.
Actually, I will have to correct you on this a little bit, because we in fact did receive some statements from Mr. Trump as of 7:51 p.m. Local time. And this is my next point in this conversation. We heard process is now in full force and effect, and we will hopefully, for the sake of humanity, get the job done, as well as we will be working quickly to have a complete ceasefire. So nothing really concrete, but do you think that those statements could actually point at Donald Trump suggesting that we are getting closer to that ceasefire?
Yes, they definitely have this assessment, this impression from these talks with Putin that they are one step closer to ceasefire. But again, the first concrete step which had been agreed is immediate ceasefire on attacks on critical infrastructure, which hasn't been followed from Russian side. So it remains to be seen what might be the next statement of Donald Trump after he gets this information that actually, after these promises, the ceasefire, the Russian actually attacked Ukraine again. And it is with the same message, with the same his post on social media that I referred to, that he labels this as the war between Russia and Ukraine, not as internal conflict in Ukraine like Russia presents it.
One of the conditions of the ceasefire, something that we've mentioned here in our program earlier today, is withholding military and intelligence aid to Ukraine. This doesn't seem like a very fulfillable condition leading to a ceasefire, is it?
It was not about the condition of ceasefire. If you read carefully, even the Kremlin statement, they say that the key precondition for the settlement of the conflict would be to have the military demobilization suspended in Ukraine, military assistance suspended, and not exchange of intel data and support Ukraine with intel data. They are not talking about the ceasefire condition. They're talking about this potential, like a peace settlement or political and diplomatic track. And this is why, for the ceasefire, what they raised and they put it in their statement from Kremlin. Like the first is they have some justifiable, actually, concerns how this monitoring of a ceasefire would be controlled, because the length of the front line is much wider, much longer than it used to be in 2014. This is the right technical question, but then they say that there is no trust and that the risk that Kyiv regime, like they label us, would inevitably breach the ceasefire because of the incidents before. So Russians are basically perversing the situation from down to top, just to try to present that Kyiv is the root of the problem, not Russian one.
Last but not least, if Putin were actually to agree to a ceasefire and withhold certain conditions that would be agreed on both sides, do you think that there is a chance that Russia would actually use that opportunity to strike again?
Of course, I think that because of the complexity of the issue, it's definitely there should be very viable solution how the ceasefire should be monitored, because this is the key question, and Russians might be very, very instrumental to breach it and to do everything to blame Ukraine on that. So we should be prepared that Russians will be playing very mean games when it comes to actually following the ceasefire.
Thank you so much. Iuliia Osmolovska, Director at Globsec Kyiv. It was a pleasure to have you on the program. And so this would be all for now here on World News Tonight, but please do stay tuned. We're back in just a moment here on TVP World to bring you more latest news and features.